Hi there, this is Prague Talk, a podcast from Radio Prague International. My name is Ian Willoughby. In this episode, my guest is writer and publisher Martin Reiner. Martin is the editor of a new book called Kamenka Republic, about a relatively little-known but highly distinctive district in his native Brno. Speaking from the Moravian capital, he explains what makes Kamenka special and why it survived for a century when other interwar workers' housing colonies in Brno have long disappeared. And Martin Reiner also discusses why he's calling time on his successful publishing house Druhé město. That's in this edition of Prague Talk. Martin, you're behind a new publication called Republika Kamenka, which I guess would translate as Kamenka Republic. The name Kamenka comes from Kamena Kolonia, which translates as stone colony. For those who don't know this part of Brno, what is Kamenka?
Well, Kamenka is a former nouzová kolonie, what I would translate as an emergency colony. But I'm not sure if a similar phenomenon ever existed in England, and then whether English has a complete adequate term for it. But let's make it emergency colony. And what makes Kamenka unique is a simple fact that it has remained almost unchanged until these days. So that's specific.
We have to go back a tiny bit, and you have to explain to me, please, what is an emergency colony? What does that mean, even?
These colonies appeared mostly in the large cities, as Prague and Brno, in 1920s. We will be talking all the time about the last century, and it was a response to the housing and later economical crisis in the First Republic, Black Friday. We know what we are talking about, and they were mostly built on the outskirts of the cities or in places such as Kamenka, which was a former quarry, and most of them were shabby and improvised dwellings. And in Brno alone, there were 17 of them. And I would say Kamenka was one of the best among these emergency colonies.
Was it the case that they were unauthorized, that the people who built the houses didn't have permits or anything like that?
Yeah, the rumors say it, but it's not true. And which is one of the discoveries of our book, because Kamenka, especially Kamenka, particularly Kamenka, was a legal colony, at least in the beginning of the existence. Well, first 45 houses were legal, but later on, relatives and the people who know the other people saw that this place was quite nice, definitely much nicer and better for living than some flats that you could meet in those poor quarters of the city. So they started to build their own houses illegally. So it's a mixture.
In the description of the book, the place is called Unique. Also in the title is the word Republic. In what sense is or was Kamenka a republic or a special place?
Well, the Kamenka was a special place because it was inhabited by workers, mostly from the lower professions, and not only this, they were often accompanied by the dregs of society, including the thieves and prostitutes. And it was well known that it's better to avoid Kamenka, not only for the kids, they were like fighting all these parties, but also for policemen and the others. It's even said that they had his own mayor, like the Kamenka, which is probably untrue, but it means Kamenka was a very special place, and I don't know who was the first who called it Republic. But it described the situation. They were outside the rest of the city, and they were specific.
But was it kind of easy to avoid Kamenka? Because I've been there some years ago. Somebody took me there for a walk and it was really fascinating. But you'd have to look for it to find it. It's a little bit kind of hidden. I presume it was relatively easy to avoid because it was like a kind of separate area on a bit of a rise, like a hill, if I remember correctly.
And that's probably the main reason why Kamenka survived until nowadays, because the city in the second half of 30s tried to demolish these colonies, mostly successfully, so that after the war, only a few remained in the city. And I think in these days, there are the last three emergency colonies in the Brno. But the thing is that the Kamenka is the only one where new young people are coming, moving in, and it is proving to be a great place to live today.
Well, I wanted to ask you who lives there because you say in the beginning it was workers and poor people and prostitutes and so on. How did that change over the years? Especially, I'm curious about in the later decades of the communist period. Who was living there?
That's what kind of created the reputation of Kamenka for the people who are moving there in these years. Because in the early 70s, Kamenka was in very bad conditions. And there were various plans made for what should replace it or even for the complete demolition. But what's funny, very typical for Kamenka, before any of this could be implemented, colony became home to many unorthodox artists who occupied mainly the higher part of the colony, buying half-decayed houses here very cheaply and then repairing them themselves. And what happened? They were happily joined by their long-haired friends. And then many spectacular parties took place here. And well, this is the period when Kamenka was rightly called an oasis or an island of freedom because of these people. Today, according the recent sociological researches, 67% of the people living in the place where in the past most of the inhabitants were barely literate, now have a college education, which is well above the national average. So it changed completely.
How did it change after 1989? I mean, what state was it in then? Was there a lot of change in the population after 89? Is it hard to get a place there?
I have a feeling because I was often a visitor in Kamenka in the 90s, in early 90s, that it looked like the Kamenka is waiting for what is going to happen next. Because 90s, as you probably know, in the Czech Republic was a pretty wild time. Everything undergone through some changes, and Kamenka was different before. But I think it was like suddenly this exceptional situation of, well, kind of a liberty during the normalization time. So suddenly it was something that didn't play a game because everything was liberated. So 90s, even in Kamenka, were wild. All the parties continued. That was great. But I think it took maybe a decade before the Kamenka changed and started the new era of its existence, with students coming, with young people buying the houses, and with more culture in it, and it started to be a little bit more organized.
Well, you've kind of hinted at it already, but what's the reason that you're doing a book right now, Martin?
The reason is simple. Kamenka is celebrating 100 years of existence right this year, and well, my friend, architect Radim Horák, who has lived in Kamenka for over 20 years, and he was always been interested in history of the place. And he knew that I knew Kamenka well. So I'm still kind of a writer. So he told me, let's make a book. Let's give a gift to Kamenka to celebrate this 100 years lasting history. And not only to celebrate it, but also a map this entire history. And so the book has been written. It has 300 pages, more over 170 photographs and various documents. So I think people will like it. I hope so.
Well, speaking of books, I also wanted to ask you a couple of other questions. One pertains to the fact that last year you were the subject of a book-length interview. The book was simply called Reiner, and you were interviewed by Milan Ohnisko. Is it my imagination, or is the format of a book-length interview something very common in Czechia?
I don't know, actually. Do you think?
Well, it doesn't really exist very much in the English-speaking world. For example, there was one with Nick Cave a couple of years ago, a book like that. But that's unusual. Here, there are many every year.
Yeah, but probably not many of them so thick as the one of me.
Well, yours is 500 pages or something, right?
That's terrible. It's terrible. Well, it's like we made an interview much shorter for Tvar, which is the literary magazine, and where Milan Ohnisko is a editor or whatever you will call it. And they are pretty strange in this way because they are really able to make a long interview if you consider the usual length of the interview in a magazine. So we made one of them 10 years ago, a long time ago, and we both were satisfied. Thing is, Milan Ohnisko is my long-term friend. We know each other from the end of 80s. So then Milan started to do interviews with celebrities for my publishing house. He did one with Daniela Drtinova, one with Koller, the musician, and then he planned to do an interview with Libuška Šafránkova, which would be great. And she told him, I'm sorry, but Joseph Abraham, her partner, her husband, was in not a good condition. And she told Milan that she had to take care about him. And then she died, even sooner than Joseph Abraham. So Milan was like kind of looking for the next one who would be willing to make the interview. I told him no, even twice, and then I agreed, and I'm glad that I did agree because I don't have to write my memoirs anymore, which would be definitely much more difficult than saying things like this in the form of an interview.
Again, sticking with books, you're probably best known, I guess, as the person behind the publishing company Druhé, Město, Second City. Over the last three and a half decades, I don't know exactly, you've brought out about 600 books, but now you're going to stop the publishing house? Call it a day?
Yeah, it's like this. It's Druhé Město is ending its regular publishing activities because I felt that it has no sense, either editorially or economically, of course. So I didn't quite exclude the possibility of publishing a book here and there. Yeah, I know how to do it, and yeah, this could happen. But after 35 years running a book publishing house, I think this stage of my life is somehow over, and I definitely want to return to my own writing quite intensively next year. I'm 61, and no one knows how long my mind will continue to serve me well. So I feel it's necessary not to miss the opportunity to at least try to do something interesting again in that field. So I will be a writer once again.
Well, I hope that goes great for you. But I must say, I have a lot of respect for you for putting so much energy into publishing for so long. And how do you think you will look back over those decades of publishing?
What I can say is that in the early 90s, I felt it almost like a vocation, like something that has to be done after the years and years of the communist regime, from the years before the Velvet Revolution. I knew all these banned writers, so there was a way to do it to make it sensible, and it was nice. Then I met Michal Vivek, which created money, so it allowed me to make it a little bit larger, to cooperate with more people. So then we became like almost the Stone publishing house with quite a great importance, I think. And the last, well, 5, 6, 7 years, first there was COVID. It was not a good time for anyone, but for publishers, it was a very bad time with the closed bookshops and thing. And then, well, then we had this energy crisis and inflation. And also, I would say some shift in reception of literature in the Czech Republic. And I didn't want even to think that I would change my editing policies just to be up to date. For more than 30 years, I did what I loved to do, and in the time when it stopped making sense, I decided just to close the house. But I don't feel anything like it's a pity. 35 years is a long, long time. I always loved to read the memoirs from the people from the older times. And it's not a long time ago, I read 2 books of memoirs of the publishers. The publishers who became very famous among the wars. I mean, not among, between the wars. And I realized it was only 20 years. Only 20 years they had to do something right and to, well, became famous. That's not the important thing. And that's exactly what happened. There were publishing houses, the existence of which took 12 years, let's say, or similar. So I think 35 years is a very, very long time. I believe that even you feel that 90s were not the same time as it is this time. So things changes. They are going through changes.
Well, once again, Martin, I really respect everything you've done with your publishing company. Good luck with your future projects, and it was great speaking to you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Many thanks indeed to Martin Reiner for speaking to me in November 2025 for this episode of Prague Talk, a podcast from Radio Prague International. If you're new to the pod and enjoyed my chat with Martin, why not look up some of the previous conversations in the series and subscribe wherever you get podcasts. But that's all for now. From me, Ian Willoughby, thank you so much for listening to Prague Talk, and talk to you again very soon.